Guys, what I'm about to tell you will make you question every excuse you've ever heard from a cheating woman. Here are the 6 lies they all use to flip the script. These aren't random excuses. They're strategic psychological manipulation tactics that get deployed the moment she needs to flip the script. What I'm about to reveal will change how you respond to her manipulation tactics forever. Real quick, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how many of you are dealing with this exact situation right now. Now, let's get back to the story. Most relationship advice tells you to trust and communicate, but I've watched my friends use these exact excuses to justify their affairs. As a woman, I know exactly how we rationalize betrayal and flip the victim script. By the time she's using these excuses, she's already rewritten the entire relationship history in her head. She's not just cheating, she's building a psychological case for why you deserved it. Every excuse is designed to make you question your own reality. Excuse number 1. You never made me feel special anymore. The first excuse she'll use is always about emotional neglect that somehow justifies physical betrayal. She tells you that you stopped appreciating her, but conveniently forgets about the flowers last month, the surprise dinner, and the weekend getaway you planned just for her. Listen up, guys. This is where the rewriting of relationship history begins. Here's how she does it. She starts by selectively remembering only moments when you were distracted or tired. That Tuesday, when you came home exhausted from work, that becomes evidence that you never pay attention to her anymore. The fact that you bought her favorite coffee every morning for 6 months? Suddenly that doesn't count because it became routine. She's systematically erasing your efforts and magnifying your human moments. But it goes deeper than just forgetting your gestures. She starts creating a false narrative where you've been emotionally absent for months or even years. She'll magnify every minor relationship issue and minimize every loving thing you've done. Did you forget to compliment her new haircut once? That becomes proof that you don't notice her anymore. Did you choose work over dinner one night when you had a deadline? That's evidence that your career matters more than her feelings. The sophisticated ones even take this further. They'll start gaslighting you about your own memories. "You never said that," becomes her favorite phrase. They'll use your friends and family as witnesses, carefully planting seeds about how neglected they feel. They'll even create documentation, screenshots of conversations where you seemed distant, photos where you looked distracted. They're building a case. She needs to establish that you failed her emotionally before she can justify seeking emotional connection elsewhere. It's the foundation for everything that comes next. If you didn't make her feel special, then someone else making her feel special becomes not just understandable, but necessary for her emotional survival. I remember one case where she claimed he never complimented her anymore. But when we looked at his phone, he'd sent her 3 loving texts just that week. He'd called her beautiful, thanked her for dinner, and told her he missed her during a business trip. But in her mind, those didn't count because he hadn't said them in person, or because his tone wasn't right, or because timing was off. Pay attention to how she's rewriting your relationship history. If she's suddenly remembering only negative moments while erasing all your efforts, she's building a case for betrayal. When someone starts systematically discounting your love while amplifying your human flaws, they're preparing to justify seeking that love elsewhere. Excuse number 2. We were already growing apart anyway. The second excuse is always about relationship deterioration that somehow happened without your knowledge. She claims you were drifting apart, but last month, you were still planning your summer vacation together and talking about moving in together. This is where she creates a distance narrative that justifies her seeking closeness with someone else. Here's the thing. She's doing retroactive relationship analysis. She's looking back at normal relationship evolution and reframing it as evidence of incompatibility. Every couple goes through phases where they're closer or more distant. Every relationship has periods of high intimacy and periods where you're both focused on other things. She takes these normal patterns and turns them into proof that you were already over. But this goes beyond just claiming distance. She starts manufacturing evidence of incompatibility that you never noticed. Remember that disagreement about where to go for dinner? That becomes evidence that you never agree on anything. That time you wanted to stay in and she wanted to go out. Proof that you want different things in life. She's highlighting normal relationship challenges and exaggerating minor disagreements into fundamental incompatibilities. The really manipulative ones even get friends to validate the growing apart narrative. They'll start telling people weeks or months before the affair surfaces that things haven't been good between you two. They create situations that prove incompatibility, suggesting activities they know you won't enjoy, then using your lack of enthusiasm as evidence. They use normal relationship evolution as proof that you were naturally drifting toward different people. If the relationship was already failing, then seeking comfort elsewhere becomes understandable rather than betrayal. She's not a cheater. She's just someone who recognized that things weren't working and found connection where it was available. The affair becomes a symptom of relationship problems rather than the cause of them. I once analyzed a case where she claimed they'd been growing apart for months, but their shared calendar showed regular date nights and intimate conversations right up until the affair started. They'd been planning a trip together just 2 weeks before she met her affair partner. But in her narrative, all of that was just going through the motions. Pay attention to sudden relationship revisionism. If she's claiming you were growing apart during a period when you felt connected, she's rewriting history to justify her actions. When someone can look back at good times and reframe them as evidence of problems, they're preparing to justify seeking better times with someone else. Excuse number 3. I never meant for it to happen. The third excuse removes all personal responsibility by claiming the affair was accidental or unplanned. She says it just happened, but somehow she had time to download new apps, create secret accounts, and plan multiple meetups. This is where she turns conscious betrayal into an unfortunate accident that could have happened to anyone. Here's how this works. She removes intentionality from every step of the betrayal process. The dating app download? She was just curious about what was out there. The private conversations? He was just easy to talk to. The meetup? It started as innocent coffee. Each step gets reframed as something that happened to her rather than choices she made. She becomes the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of deception. But accidental affairs require a lot of planning. There's deliberate app downloads and account creation. There's conscious decision-making at every step. What photos to use, how to describe herself, how much personal information to share. There's systematic deception over time as she creates alibis, manages 2 different communication streams, and carefully coordinates schedules. None of this happens by accident. The most manipulative ones even create evidence of reluctance and resistance. They'll document their supposed internal struggle, messages to friends about feeling confused, journal entries about fighting temptation. They build a narrative of being swept away by forces beyond their control. They make it seem like they fought against it, but ultimately couldn't resist the connection they found with this other person. If it wasn't intentional, then she's not a bad person. She's just someone who made a mistake. A series of unfortunate decisions rather than calculated betrayal. This excuse transforms her from someone who chose to cheat into someone who got caught up in something bigger than herself. It removes moral judgment and replaces it with sympathy for someone who lost control. I remember reviewing one case where she claimed it just happened, but her phone showed 3 weeks of increasingly intimate messages and careful planning of their first meeting. She'd researched the restaurant, planned her outfit, and even practiced what she was going to say. But in her version, she just ended up there somehow. Pay attention to the contradiction between accidental affairs and deliberate preparation. Affairs require consistent choice-making. They don't just happen. When someone can plan and execute a complex deception while claiming it was unintentional, they're manipulating both the narrative and your perception of their character. Excuse number 4. You pushed me away. The fourth excuse flips the script completely. Now you're responsible for her decision to cheat. She claims you pushed her away, but you've been trying to connect more, asking about her day, and suggesting couples activities. This is where your normal behavior gets reframed as the root cause of her betrayal. Here's what happens. She starts reversing blame for relationship issues and making your behavior the cause of her choices. Your need for space after a stressful day becomes emotional abandonment. Your focus on work or family responsibilities becomes evidence that she's not a priority. Your normal human need for downtime becomes proof that you don't want to spend time with her. But this blame shifting goes deeper. She's reframing your normal behavior as rejection and using your busy work schedule as evidence of neglect. That over time, you work to pay for her birthday gift? That becomes proof that work matters more than she does. Your need to decompress after dealing with difficult clients all day? That's evidence that you find her draining. She turns your efforts to provide and succeed into evidence of abandonment. The really skilled ones even get you to apologize for her affair. They make you feel guilty for causing her pain and use your apology as validation of their narrative. Here's exactly how this conversation goes down. She'll start with something like, "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but when you work late every night, it makes me feel invisible." Then she'll pause, letting that sink in while watching your face. When you start to feel bad, she continues, "I tried to tell you I needed more attention, but you were always too busy or too tired to really listen to me." Now here's the trap. Your natural instinct is to defend yourself or try to make her feel better. So you might say something like, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you felt that way. I was just trying to provide for us." And boom, she's got you. She'll respond with tears in her eyes. "I know you were working hard, and I love that about you, but I felt so lonely. When someone finally made me feel seen and appreciated, I couldn't help but respond to that feeling." Notice what just happened? She got you to apologize for working hard to support your relationship, then used that apology to justify why she sought attention elsewhere. Your apology becomes evidence that even you recognize you weren't meeting her needs. She'll reference this conversation later, saying things like, "Even you admitted that you weren't there for me emotionally." She transforms your compassionate response to her pain into a confession of guilt that justifies her betrayal. Before you know it, you're apologizing for the very behaviors that made her affair possible, and she's using that apology as proof that you acknowledge your role in driving her away. If you pushed her away, then seeking connection elsewhere becomes self-defense rather than betrayal. She's not choosing someone else over you. She's protecting herself from your rejection. The affair becomes a survival mechanism rather than a selfish choice. She's not running towards someone else. She's running away from your neglect. I once saw a case where she claimed he pushed her away by working late, but he was working extra hours to pay for the engagement ring he was planning to surprise her with. He'd taken on additional projects specifically to afford the ring she'd admired months earlier. But in her narrative, those extra hours were evidence that she wasn't important to him. Pay attention to how your normal life responsibilities are being reframed as relationship neglect. If she's making your efforts to provide or succeed into evidence of abandonment, she's building a case for betrayal. When someone can take your love-motivated actions and turn them into proof that you don't love them, they're preparing to justify seeking love elsewhere. Excuse number 5. I was going to tell you eventually. The fifth excuse is about timing. She was going to come clean, so the deception somehow doesn't count. She says she was going to tell you eventually, but she's been deleting messages, creating alibis, and lying to your face for months. This is where active deception gets reframed as delayed honesty. Here's how this works. She creates an intention to confess narrative that minimizes active deception and makes discovery seem premature. In her version, she was wrestling with how to tell you and just needed more time to figure out the right way. The lies weren't really lies. They were protective measures while she worked up the courage to be honest. The cover-up wasn't deception, it was careful consideration of your feelings. But this eventual honesty claim ignores current deception. There's systematic lying and cover-up behavior happening in real time. There's active evidence destruction as she deletes messages, clears browser history, and coordinates stories with her affair partner. There's calculated manipulation of your trust as she uses your love for her to make her lies more believable. None of this looks like someone preparing to confess. The most manipulative ones even create false deadlines for confession and use your discovery as evidence of impatience. They'll say things like, "I was going to tell you after the holidays," or "I just needed to get through this work project first." When you find out before their arbitrary deadline, they make you feel guilty for not waiting longer. They turn your discovery into proof that you don't trust them to do the right thing. If she was going to tell you anyway, then she's not a liar. She's just someone who needed time to figure things out. The deception becomes temporary rather than ongoing. This excuse transforms months of lies into a brief period of internal struggle. It makes her seem considerate rather than calculating, protective rather than selfish. I analyzed one case where she claimed she was going to tell him after the holidays, but her messages showed she was planning to continue the affair indefinitely. She'd booked hotel rooms for months in advance and was making long-term plans with her affair partner. There was no evidence anywhere of intended confession, only evidence of intended continuation. Pay attention to the gap between claimed future honesty and current deception. If she's actively lying while claiming she was going to tell you, she's manipulating both timelines. When someone can maintain complex deception while claiming they were preparing to confess, they're rewriting both past and future to avoid accountability. Excuse number 6. I was unhappy and didn't know how to tell you. The sixth excuse makes her affair a communication issue rather than a betrayal. She was suffering in silence. She claims she was unhappy and couldn't tell you, but she found multiple ways to communicate intimate details with her affair partner. This is where betrayal gets reframed as a communication breakdown that you could have prevented. Here's what's happening. She's reframing betrayal as communication failure and creating a narrative of hidden suffering. In her version, she tried to tell you she was unhappy, but you weren't listening, or weren't available, or weren't understanding. The affair becomes a cry for help, rather than a selfish choice. She was so desperate to be heard and understood that she had to seek that understanding elsewhere. But this communication breakdown excuse ignores her actual communication abilities. She had detailed intimate conversations with her affair partner where she articulated exactly what she wanted, needed, and was missing. She found ways to express her desires, fears, and dreams to someone she barely knew. She demonstrated sophisticated communication skills when it came to building connection with someone new. The most skilled ones even create evidence of attempted communication and use your responses as proof of your inadequacy. They'll bring up past conversations where they mentioned being unhappy, conveniently forgetting that they never actually said they were considering leaving or seeking connection elsewhere. They make you feel guilty for not being a mind reader and use your normal human responses as evidence that you don't really care about their feelings. If she was suffering in silence, then the affair becomes a symptom of your communication failure rather than her betrayal. She's not a cheater. She's someone who was so starved for understanding that she had to find it where it was available. The affair partner becomes the solution to a problem you created by not listening well enough or caring enough to really hear her. I remember one case where she claimed she couldn't tell him she was unhappy, but her affair partner's messages showed her articulating exactly what she wanted, in incredible detail. She described her ideal relationship, her emotional needs, and her future dreams with stunning clarity. She had no trouble communicating when she wanted to build something with someone new. Pay attention to the contradiction between claimed communication difficulties with you and detailed communication with others. If she can express herself clearly elsewhere, the problem isn't communication, it's choice. When someone can articulate their needs perfectly to an affair partner while claiming they couldn't tell you they were unhappy, they're choosing where to direct their communication skills. By the time she's cycling through these 6 excuses, you're not dealing with someone who made a mistake. You're dealing with someone who's systematically rewriting reality to avoid accountability. Each excuse is designed to make you question your own memory, your own efforts, and your own worth in the relationship. Your peace of mind is worth more than someone else's guilt management system, and your reality is more important than her narrative. When someone can cheat and still make you feel like the problem, they've shown you exactly how they handle responsibility in relationships. The question isn't whether her excuses make sense, it's whether you're ready to stop accepting responsibility for someone else's choices. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.